In the landscape of American popular fiction, few names loom as large or as distinct as John Grisham, Dean Koontz, and Stephen King. Each of them has built an empire of imagination, commanding millions of readers across decades. Yet, despite sharing bestseller lists and midnight release lines, their worlds could hardly be more different. John Grisham writes with the precision of a man who knows how justice works and how it fails. A former attorney and Mississippi legislator, he turned his insider knowledge of the courtroom into a literary career that exposed the human drama buried in legal procedure. His novels, From a Time to Kill to The Pelican Brief, unfold like intricate legal puzzles in which ordinary citizens face extraordinary moral tests. Grisham's prose is lean and efficient, mirroring the clipped cadence of cross-examination. He trades in realism, not romance. His villains are corporate titans, corrupt politicians, or lawyers gone rogue. Yet, beneath the procedural surface lies a moral tension. His characters are forced to choose between the law and what's right. The stakes aren't supernatural, they're ethical. Dean Koontz. If Grisham's courtroom is built of oak and logic, Dean Koontz's world is stitched together from dreams and nightmares. Koontz moves fluidly through genres, blending horror, science fiction, and metaphysical mystery into something uniquely his own. He's fascinated by what happens when technology or faith or fate goes wrong, and his stories often revolve around lonely, gifted individuals confronting forces they can barely comprehend. Koontz's prose is lush and musical, almost gothic in its rhythm. He doesn't just scare his readers, he hypnotizes them. Beneath the tension, there's often a redemptive core. His heroes seek meaning in chaos, love in terror, light in darkness. Works like Watchers, Intensity, and the Odd Thomas series show his obsession with the fragile border between the real and the surreal, the human and the divine. Then there is Stephen King, the storyteller who turned small-town America into a stage for our collective fears. From Carrie to It to The Shining, King has spent half a century revealing that the true monsters are not only the supernatural ones, but also the human ones, our guilt, our grief, our capacity for cruelty. King's genius lies in his grounding of horror in the ordinary. His settings, Maine towns, suburban cul-de-sacs, high schools, and hospitals, are instantly recognizable. His characters, deeply human and often flawed, give the supernatural a chilling believability. And through his conversational style and sprawling narratives, King achieves something rare in popular fiction: psychological realism inside the unreal. King doesn't just tell scary stories, he holds up a cracked mirror to American life. His monsters speak in metaphors about trauma, addiction, and moral decay. And his heroes, whether a writer trapped in a haunted hotel or a child confronting an ancient evil, remind us that courage doesn't banish fear, it lives beside it. Three visions, one legacy together, Grisham, Koontz, and King, define the modern American page-turner. Each transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary, through law, through fear, through horror, and each, in his own way, offers a vision of morality under pressure. Grisham warns of systemic corruption, Koontz explores the spiritual cost of evil, and King reveals the monsters that live within us all. They may inhabit different genres, but they share a single ambition: to make us see ourselves and our world more clearly through the stories that keep us turning pages deep into the night. Join me as we take a closer look at three wonderfully talented authors of our time. I'm Psychotic, and welcome to another edition of Good Hope Media. John Grisham, the small-town lawyer who rewrote the rules of the bestseller. Before he became one of the most read novelists on the planet, John Grisham was a young Mississippi lawyer with a stubborn dream and a battered legal pad filled with notes for a story no one wanted to publish. Today, more than 300 million copies of his books have sold worldwide, and his name has become almost synonymous with the legal thriller. But Grisham's journey from the baseball fields of the South to the shelves of every airport bookstore is a tale of grit, timing, and quiet rebellion. Roots in red clay. John Ray Grisham Jr. was born on February 8, 1955, in Jonesboro, Arkansas, the second of 5 children in a family that moved wherever the work was. His father built homes and farmed cotton. His mother kept the household running and pushed her son to read, a small act that would later change his life. When John was 4, the family settled in South Haven, Mississippi, a town just south of Memphis. He dreamed of baseball, not books. I wanted to be a professional ball player, he later said, a dream that lasted until age 18, when a high-velocity beanball ended his ambitions. In a foreword to his novel Calico Joe, he recalled how close that pitch came to altering his life in a far worse way. Grisham worked hard jobs as a teenager, watering plants for $1 an hour, digging post holes for a fence crew, and sweating through summers on highway asphalt crews. One day, when gunfire broke out among his coworkers, he hid in a nearby restroom until the police came. That was the moment, he later said, when he got serious about college. Education of a Southern storyteller. College wasn't a straight path. Grisham bounced from Northwest Mississippi Community College to Delta State University, where he tried again to make the baseball team, before finally finding stability at Mississippi State University. He graduated in 1977 with a degree in accounting, inspired by a fellow student, a Vietnam veteran, who planned to go to law school. Grisham followed suit, earning his law degree at the University of Mississippi in 1981. He thought he'd become a tax lawyer until he realized he preferred the messier, more human drama of trial law. By the early 1980s, he was a small-town attorney representing everyday people in Mississippi courtrooms and serving as a Democratic member of the Mississippi House of Representatives. But between hearings and legislative sessions, he began to write, the case that sparked a career. One morning in 1984, Grisham sat in a courtroom and watched a young girl testify about a brutal crime committed against her. The scene haunted him. I remember staring at the defendant and wishing I had a gun, he later admitted. The idea became the seed for A Time to Kill, a novel about a father who takes justice into his own hands after his daughter's assault. It took him 3 years to write, mostly before dawn and after long days at work. When he finished, 28 publishers turned it down before a small outfit, Winwood Press, took a chance with a 1,000-copy print run in 1988. The book barely sold, but Grisham was already writing the next one. That second novel, The Firm, changed everything. Published in 1991, it sold 7 million copies, stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for nearly a year, and became a Tom Cruise film that grossed $270 million. Overnight, The Mississippi Lawyer was a literary sensation. From courtroom to Hollywood success brought a cascade of film deals. The Pelican Brief, 1993, starred Julia Roberts and Denzel Washington. The Client, 1994, featured Susan Sarandon and Tommy Lee Jones, and soon the industry was paying millions for rights to his unpublished manuscripts. Grisham's stories, sharp, fast-paced, morally charged, felt made for the screen. Through the 1990s and 2000s, he became a publishing phenomenon. Year after year, his novels topped bestseller lists, from The Chamber to The Runaway Jury, The Broker, and The Summons. His streak of success was so consistent that the New York Times once joked it could save space by simply printing John Grisham again. Beyond the Law. Though best known for his courtroom dramas, Grisham never confined himself to them. A Painted House explored his rural Arkansas roots, Skipping Christmas became the hit film Christmas with the Cranks, and his Theodore Boone series introduced legal intrigue to younger readers. He's even written about baseball, co-writing the screenplay for Mickey, 2004, a film starring Harry Connick Jr. In interviews, Grisham admits he's a fast worker. 6 months to write a book, he told Charlie Rose. Then I take 6 months off. That rhythm has produced dozens of bestsellers and made him one of only 3 English-language authors, alongside Tom Clancy and J.K. Rowling, to sell more than 2 million copies on a first printing. The southern heart of his stories. No matter how far his fame reaches, Grisham's imagination remains rooted in the South. His fictional Ford County and its courthouse town of Clanton, Mississippi, appear again and again, settings scarred by racism, poverty, and moral struggle. It's where I come from, he once said. I know the rhythms of those voices. A Quiet Life and Loud Causes. Grisham married Renee Jones in 1981. They have 2 children and divide their time between homes in Virginia, Florida, and North Carolina. Despite his success, he's known for an understated lifestyle and deep philanthropy. With his wife, he founded a charitable trust that funds medical missions, schools, and chapels in Brazil. He's also a board member of the Innocence Project, advocating for the wrongfully convicted and opposing the death penalty, a stance reflected in novels like The Confession. When he spoke before Congress, he didn't sound like a celebrity author, but like the lawyer he once was, still fighting for fairness in the system he once served. The writer who stayed grounded. John Grisham still loves baseball. He helped fund youth leagues in Mississippi and Virginia, built a multi-million-dollar Little League complex, and remains a loyal fan of Mississippi State University's Bulldogs. In the John Grisham Room at MSU's library, visitors can find the yellowed pages and typewritten drafts that began it all, the remnants of a lawyer who once scribbled a story in the margins of his legal pads. Decades later, that story has echoed across the world, and Grisham, the man who almost stayed a small-town attorney, continues to prove that in the right hands, justice and storytelling can still surprise us.
What is your process by which you can write a book a year, and how do you do it? And are you very regimented in the way you do it, or very haphazard?
I start a book every year on January the 1st. That's a rule. I've had that for a long time. I make myself start. And toward the end of the year, I start thinking about what's the next book. What's the best idea I have for the next book? And so far, there are always several ideas, 2 or 3 ideas. And then I'll pick the best idea on January the 1st, and I'll write 1,000 words a day for 5 days a week for 6 months, with the goal of finishing by July the 1st.
And do you write in longhand or computer?
No, I wrote A Time to Kill in longhand, and I wrote half of The Firm in longhand. But this is 1988. By the time I was halfway through The Firm, I bought one of the first generation Olivetti little word processors with a tiny screen. And so I finished the book on a word processor, and now it's all computer. I have certain rules about writing popular fiction, and one of the rules I'm certain about is I never write the first scene until I know the last scene.
Dean Koontz, the architect of fear and faith. It's barely light in Newport Coast, California, when Dean Koontz begins his day. The view from his study window stretches toward the Pacific, soft mist spilling over the cliffs like a secret. His home, quiet, secluded, guarded by gates and silence, feels like the kind of setting he might have invented. Immaculate on the surface, mysterious underneath. For decades, this has been his fortress and his workshop. Every morning, he rises before the sun, his golden retriever padding at his side, and sits down to write. "I'm happiest when I'm working," he once said. "When I'm writing, I can make sense of the chaos." That's saying something for a man who's built an empire from chaos, literally. Across more than 100 novels, Dean Ray Koontz has explored the places where horror and wonder meet, where ordinary people face extraordinary evil, and where grace, sometimes divine, sometimes human, flickers like a match in the dark. He's been called a suspense novelist, a horror writer, even a philosopher disguised as a pulp storyteller. But Koontz resists those boxes. Genre, he once told an interviewer, is just a shelf label. I write about people trying to find decency and meaning in a violent world. Everything else grows out of that. It's a perspective that feels earned, because before Koontz built his world of twisted villains and courageous hearts, he lived inside one himself. The Boy from Bedford. Dean Koontz was born in 1945 in Everett, Pennsylvania, a sleepy town of red barns and rolling hills that hid more than its share of secrets. His father, Raymond, was an unpredictable alcoholic who brought rage home like weather. His mother, Florence, a small woman with quiet fire, refused to bow to it. In interviews, Koontz has described those years with a mixture of pain and reverence. His father would beat him, sometimes with a belt, sometimes with words sharp enough to cut. But his mother, frail in frame, iron in will, stood her ground. She was fearless, he said, even though she had every reason not to be. That courage, the will to stand against brutality, is the emotional DNA of his work. Nearly every Koontz novel has a character who endures something unimaginable, only to find strength in compassion or faith. "I think," he once told Rolling Stone, "I've been writing my way out of that house ever since." By the time he reached Bedford High School, Koontz had discovered that stories could do what fists couldn't, fight back. Books became his refuge, his revenge, and his education. Reading showed me the possibility of different worlds, he said, and that maybe I could create one, too. Love, faith, and the first story. At Shippensburg State College, Koontz met Gerda Ann Sarah, the sharp, dark-eyed girl who laughed at his jokes and shared his love of books. She would become his wife, his business partner, and his unwavering ally. They married in 1966 during his senior year, a decision that would anchor his life for the next 60 years. That same year, Koontz won a short story contest sponsored by the Atlantic Monthly, a victory that offered something he hadn't had before: permission to believe. He started teaching English at Mechanicsburg High School, but his mind was already elsewhere, on strange worlds, moral riddles, and restless characters who refused to leave him alone. During the day, he taught grammar. At night, he wrote. By 1968, his first novel, Star Quest, was published, a slim science fiction paperback that earned him almost nothing but the thrill of seeing his name in print. To most, it would have been a footnote. To Koontz, it was ignition, a harsh education. In the late 1960s, Koontz took a job with a federally funded program designed to help impoverished children in Appalachia. What he saw there would shape him for life. It was supposed to be noble and uplifting, he said years later, but it was a mess. Money vanished, the system was broken, and the kids, many of them violent, were being warehoused, not helped. That experience tore open his political innocence. I realized most government programs weren't built to help people, he said. They were built to control them. It was, in his words, a conversion moment. The idealistic liberal became something more complicated, a man with liberal instincts on civil rights, conservative convictions on defense, and a libertarian streak that would run through his life and his fiction. Koontz's heroes, from Watchers to Odd Thomas, aren't political. They're moral, loners who resist authority, guided by conscience more than ideology. You could call them spiritual warriors, he once said, ordinary people who refuse to surrender their humanity. Learning the trade. Throughout the 1970s, Koontz wrote at a punishing pace, sometimes 8 books a year, under names like Lee Nichols, Brian Coffey, David Axton, and Owen West. He wrote thrillers, gothic romances, sci-fi adventures, anything that paid the bills. I wrote whatever I could, he admitted later. Those were my apprenticeship years. I learned by doing and by failing. But the failures were lessons. He discovered the rhythms of suspense, the emotional logic of terror, and the alchemy of turning fear into empathy. Even then, faith was quietly threading through his work. Having converted to Catholicism in college, Koontz saw the religion's intellectual depth as a counterweight to the chaos he'd grown up in. Catholicism, he said, allowed me to see life as mystery and miracle, not as accident and cruelty. That vision would set him apart from other horror writers. Where Stephen King's worlds crackle with dread, Koontz's often glow with redemption. The evil is always real, but so is grace, the breakthrough years. By the late 1970s, Koontz was restless. He'd published dozens of novels, most forgotten almost as soon as they appeared. But in 1977, something changed. His novel Demon Seed, a blend of horror and technology, was adapted into a film starring Julie Christie. The book exploded, selling more than 2 million copies. Suddenly, Dean Koontz wasn't just a working writer. He was a bestseller. Then came The Key to Midnight, The Funhouse, and finally Whispers in 1980, the book that put his real name on the map. From there, the hits kept coming. Phantoms, Watchers, Lightning, Strangers, Odd Thomas. Each fused page-turning suspense with a moral core. He was writing not just about monsters, but about meaning, about how love survives fear, how courage redeems tragedy. Critics took a while to catch up, but readers didn't need convincing. By the mid-1990s, Koontz was one of the most successful writers on earth. His books sold in the hundreds of millions. Rolling Stone called him America's most popular suspense novelist. He'd done it without ever giving up his desk at dawn. The man and his muse, Trixie. In the 1990s, Koontz found a new muse, one with fur. Her name was Trixie, a golden retriever retired from Canine Companions for Independence, CCI, a nonprofit that trains service dogs. CCI had given Trixie to the Koontzes in gratitude for their donations, over $2.5 million by that point. To Dean and Gerda, she was family. To readers, she became a legend. Trixie appeared in author photos, essays, and 2 books, Life is Good and Christmas is Good, written from her point of view. The royalties all went to CCI. When Trixie died in 2007, Koontz was devastated. She was joy itself, he wrote in A Big Little Life, his tender memoir about their time together. Afterward, he began signing certain blog posts as Toto's, Trixie on the Other Side. It wasn't sentimentality, it was belief. If you've ever truly loved a dog, he said, you know the soul exists. The reinvention. Even after half a century in print, Koontz refused to stand still. In 2019, he left his longtime publisher and signed with Amazon Publishing, a move that shocked the industry. I've always been open to change, he said. Writers should evolve, not calcify. The partnership revitalized him. His later novels, Devoted, The Big Dark Sky, After Death, continued to explore the moral tension between light and darkness, framed now by the quiet confidence of a master at peace with his craft. As of today, Koontz has sold more than 450 million copies worldwide. His fortune ranks him among the wealthiest writers in the world, tied at one point with John Grisham for annual earnings. But when asked what success means, Koontz's answer is characteristically humble. It means I can keep writing. That's all I ever wanted. The private life of a public writer. For all his fame, Koontz remains intensely private. He and Gerda have no children, and they guard their solitude as fiercely as he once guarded his manuscripts. Friends describe him as warm but precise, a man whose humor runs dry and whose discipline borders on monastic. He's the same man you meet in his books, one longtime editor said, kind, methodical, and a little haunted. He works in longhand, revising each page as many as 20 times before typing it. Writing, he says, is architecture, not excavation. That perfectionism shows. His prose, crisp and cinematic, carries a rhythm all its own, an elegant balance of menace and wonder. His heroes might face serial killers, monsters, or supernatural forces, but what truly drives them is moral clarity. In every Koontz novel, the real enemy isn't evil itself, it's despair, fear, faith, and the final word. There's a paradox at the heart of Dean Koontz's career. He's a master of fear who writes from hope. His stories are filled with violence, yet they end with grace. They make you flinch, then make you believe again. In that way, he's less a horror writer than a moral cartographer, mapping how people find their way through the dark. When asked what keeps him going after so many books, Koontz didn't hesitate. The world can be cruel, he said, but writing lets me remind myself, and maybe my readers, that goodness matters, that love isn't foolish, that wonder still exists. It's a philosophy that explains everything. The child who survived brutality, the man who found salvation in art, and the author who turned fear into something beautiful. Dean Koontz has spent his life building worlds where evil never wins for long. And perhaps that's the truest story of all, the story of a boy who escaped his father's violence and spent the rest of his life proving that light, no matter how fragile, will always find its way back.
My daily writing routine is I'm up at 5 o'clock, shower, walk the dog, feed the dog, at my desk by 6:30, and I work all day until 5. If it's going well, I sit in here as happy and smiling and laughing, and if it's not, people hear me thumping my head against the desk. But thankfully, more days than not, it goes better than not. And I find long writing sessions much better than 3 or 4 hour sessions because I fall away into the world of the novel. I do not outline my novels. I let the character go with it. I actually think the best novels are the ones that start with the character. And in my Jane Hawk novels, that was absolutely true. She came on scene and I didn't quite know who she was going to be. And then she became somebody I had to know about. When you sit down to start a novel, you never know how long it's going to take. That's the most terrifying thing about it, because you do have deadlines that you want to meet or come as close to meeting as you can. If it's a very long book, like From the Corner of His Eye or The Face or Ashley Bell, it can take a year. But for me, a year is a year of 60, 70-hour weeks, and toward the end, it even can get more intense than that.
Stephen King, A Life in Fear, Fiction, and the American Imagination. Stephen Edwin King, born on September 21, 1947, in Portland, Maine, is one of the most prolific and influential authors of the 20th and 21st centuries. Widely known as the King of Horror, his literary empire spans far beyond the genre that made him famous. With a career that includes more than 60 novels, over 200 short stories, numerous novellas, essays, screenplays, and collaborations, King has shaped the landscape of popular fiction and left an indelible mark on American culture. King's early life was marked by instability and hardship. His father, Donald Edwin King, abandoned the family when Stephen was just 2 years old, leaving his mother, Nellie Ruth Pillsbury King, to raise him and his older brother David alone. The family moved frequently, relying on relatives across several states, including Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Connecticut, before settling in Durham, Maine. These early experiences of displacement and financial struggle would later inform the emotional depth and small-town settings of King's fiction. From a young age, King was drawn to storytelling. He began by copying comic book panels and inventing his own tales, encouraged by his mother's praise and his aunt's modest payments for each story. A pivotal moment came when a bookmobile librarian handed him Lord of the Flies, a novel that seized his imagination and revealed the power of literature to confront life's darkest truths. King later described the experience as being seized by the throat by the story, a sensation that would become a hallmark of his own writing. King attended Lisbon High School in Maine and later enrolled at the University of Maine at Orono in 1966. There, he wrote for the student newspaper, the Maine Campus, and found mentorship in professors Edward Holmes and Burton Hatlin. Hatlin, in particular, became a lifelong influence, introducing King to literary theory and encouraging his creative ambitions. During college, King met Tabitha Spruce, a fellow writer and student, whom he married in 1971. The couple would go on to raise 3 children, Naomi, Joe, and Owen. After graduating with a degree in English in 1970, King struggled to find stable work. He took on various jobs, including janitorial work and teaching English at Hampton Academy. All the while, he continued to write short stories, selling them to men's magazines like Cavalier. His first professional sale was The Glass Floor in 1967, and many of his early stories were later collected in Night Shift, 1978. King's breakthrough came with Carrie, 1974, a novel about a bullied teenage girl with telekinetic powers. Initially intended as a short story, King abandoned the manuscript until Tabitha retrieved it from the trash and urged him to continue. The novel's success was meteoric, launching King into literary stardom and establishing his reputation as a master of horror. He followed with Salem's Lot, 1975, The Shining, 1977, and The Stand, 1978, each expanding his thematic range and deepening his exploration of fear, isolation, and the supernatural. The Shining, inspired by a stay at the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, introduced readers to Jack Torrance, an alcoholic writer unraveling in a haunted hotel, a character that mirrored King's own struggles with addiction. The 1980s were a period of intense creativity and personal turmoil. King published Firestarter, Cujo, Pet Sematary, and It, among others, while battling addiction to alcohol and cocaine. He later admitted that he barely remembered writing Cujo. Despite these challenges, his work continued to evolve. Different Seasons, 1982, marked a departure from horror, featuring novellas like The Body and Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, which were adapted into critically acclaimed films. Prosody, King also explored fantasy with The Eyes of the Dragon and psychological horror with Misery, a novel inspired by his own fears of fan obsession and substance dependency. His wife Tabitha eventually staged an intervention, leading King to seek treatment and achieve sobriety. Sobriety ushered in a new phase of King's career. He published Needful Things, Gerald's Game, and Dolores Claiborne, novels that delved into female protagonists and psychological trauma. The Green Mile, released as a serialized novel, became a publishing phenomenon and was later adapted into a successful film. In 1999, King was struck by a van while walking near his home. The accident left him severely injured and temporarily unable to write. He later reflected on the incident with dark humor, noting the eerie resemblance to one of his own fictional scenarios. The experience deepened his understanding of mortality and influenced subsequent works. King returned to writing with On Writing, 2000, a memoir and guide that has become essential reading for aspiring authors. He embraced digital publishing with Riding the Bullet, the first mass-market ebook, and experimented with online serialization in The Plant. Though the latter project was never completed, it demonstrated King's willingness to innovate. He continued to publish prolifically, releasing Lisey's Story, Duma Key, Under the Dome, and Cell, among others. Lisey's Story, which King considers his favorite novel, explores the intimate world of marriage and grief through the lens of fantasy. In the 2010s, King expanded into crime fiction with the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, which won the Edgar Award for Best Novel. He revisited classic horror with Revival, Dr. Sleep, a sequel to The Shining, and The Outsider. His later works, including The Institute, Fairy Tale, and Holly, continue to explore themes of trauma, resilience, and the supernatural. King has also collaborated with other writers, including Peter Straub, The Talisman, Black House, his sons Joe Hill and Owen King, Sleeping Beauties, and Richard Chismar, Gwendy's Button Box series. His influence extends to comics, theater, and film, with adaptations of his work spanning decades and genres. King's writing is characterized by vivid imagery, psychological realism, and a deep empathy for his characters. He often begins with a what-if scenario and allows the story to unfold organically. His settings, frequently small towns in Maine, serve as microcosms for broader societal fears. Themes of childhood trauma, addiction, redemption, and the intrusion of the extraordinary into ordinary life recur throughout his work. He frequently uses writers as protagonists and has even inserted himself into his fiction, notably in the Dark Tower series. His style blends colloquial dialogue with literary allusion, and his use of metaphor and simile creates memorable, haunting imagery. To publish more frequently than the industry allowed, King adopted the pseudonym Richard Bachman, under which he released several darker, grittier novels. Bachman was eventually exposed by a bookstore clerk, leading King to kill off the pseudonym. He later revived Bachman for The Regulators and Blaze. King has also used other pseudonyms, including Beryl Evans and John Swithin, for specific projects. King's contributions to literature have been recognized with numerous awards, including the National Medal of Arts, the Medal for Distinguished Contribution to American Letters, and the Grand Master Award from the Mystery Writers of America. Joyce Carol Oates praised him as a psychologically realistic writer whose work reflects the American experience. His influence on popular culture is vast. Films like The Shawshank Redemption, Stand By Me, and It have become cultural touchstones. His work has inspired generations of writers, filmmakers, and artists, and his legacy continues to grow. King lives in Maine and Florida with Tabitha, and they remain active in philanthropy through the Stephen and Tabitha King Foundation. He is a passionate supporter of libraries, education, and local community initiatives. A lifelong Red Sox fan and music lover, King's interests are as eclectic as his fiction.
Yes, there is something I want to ask you.
All right.
How the fuck do you write so many books so fast?
Here's the thing, okay? There are books and there are books. The way that I work, I try to get out there and I try to get 6 pages a day. So with a book like End of Watch, and when I'm working, I work every day, 3-4 hours, and I try to get those 6 pages and I try to get them fairly clean. So if the manuscript is, let's say, 360 pages long, that's basically 2 months' work. It's concentrated, but it's but that's assuming that it goes well.
And you do hit 6 pages a day?
I usually do.
So, there you have it. A small glimpse into the lives and minds of 3 of the most gifted authors of our time. We hope you enjoyed our presentation, especially if you're a fan of 1, 2, or all 3. May they continue to provide the world with their stories of intrigue, and may they all remain at the top. This is Good Hope Media signing off for now. Please stay safe and keep it positive.